Welcome to the Art of Equine Alchemy. I'm your host, Amber Leidick, horse trainer, healer, and mentor. This is a podcast where practical horsemanship meets personal evolution. Here, we're diving into what it means to truly connect with your horse, yourself, and the world around you. Through conversations with equine professionals, horse owners, and members of our community, we will explore real stories, actionable insights, and tools designed to help you heal and thrive. This isn't just about horses. It's about transforming how you show up in your life. Because when you address what's happening within yourself, everything around you starts to align. Whether you're looking to refine your horsemanship skills, gain clarity on your own path, or create a more meaningful connection in all areas of your life, you are in the right place. Let's get started. Okay, hi you guys. This is not how I planned to do this, but here we are. I know some of you have been around for quite a while. And when I first started my group, I was doing these Mirror Mondays where I would personally watch something and then just use it as like the topic conversation that I wanted to have, just for inspiration and whatever. And then I realized I stopped doing that, and everything else got so busy that I just lost track of all the things in the group. And I was sitting with January trying to figure out like what does 2025 look like. And I was like, oh, I really liked my little group, and I feel like I wanted to revive it a little bit because it was such a special place, and things just got kind of busy. So I was like, well, maybe I'll just do that and I'll bring that back. And what happened was all these other different little pieces of what I think I wanted it to be started coming through. So I almost feel like what I want to do with these is going to be twice a month. It'll be the second and fourth Friday, just kidding, Monday of every month. And I will, after this meeting, share a video for the up and coming one. So you'll have like a couple weeks to watch it. They will always be under 15 minutes. And so they'll be short and quick. And I feel like it's inspired just from the fact that I've spoken a lot about most of my stuff that I figured out and learned that has supported me with my connection with my horses has been from non-horse people. And I feel like unless you are like actively in that world, you don't really get a taste for it, because I feel like there was all these people I just didn't know. And so I wanted to bring that piece back, and I wanted to be able to just do like a little quickie discussion to spark that type of stuff in any of you that are on the same path. And so that's the inspiration behind this. It'll be so difficult. Even try to be prepared. So I don't know if have any of you guys watched the video that I shared, or I can just go into talking about it. But if any of you want to drop in the comments, like if you actually watched it, it was a pretty short one. And all that I did was like go on to some of my favorite people's YouTube, and just like I was like, okay, Uni, like show me the one I need. And so that's basically how I picked it. And I love Peter Crone. I love him, and I love the way he speaks on that. And I talked yesterday a little bit about my passion for relationship with self and other people and horses, and I thought great for him because he speaks a lot to relationship. Oh yeah, so a lot of you watched it. That's rad. It was very short. It was very great. Obsessed with him. Have been for years. And so what I really wanted to do was just speak to that piece of the accountability. Accountability is tricky because you can think from a logical standpoint. Of course, I want to be accountable. Of course, I want to, have these relationships that are very connected and special and vulnerable. And when it starts to bump up against the ego and the part of you that's like, no, this is who I am. You can't see me that way because this is how I am. This is who I know I am. How dare you see me in a way that is not the way I see myself. So it can be a little threatening and scary. especially when you're starting to just notice patterns and want to break those patterns up, and it becomes a little bit like a death of your old identity, and so your ego tries to hang on to that stuff. So I took some notes on this little episode, and I want to get your guys' feedback. Like, for you guys, how did the video make you feel? Did it make you feel like called out? Did it make you feel like, wow, that's a good idea? Like, just drop in the comments anything that felt like resonated with you, or anything about it where you're like, oh, wow. Um, for me, I loved the exercise of when you wake up in the morning and you're feeling stressed. So some of you are in the tea house, and we're doing the Dr. Joe Dispenza book. And he talks about when you wake up in the morning, that's like the first and best time. And we talk about it in Manifesting Magic too. It's the first and best time to start to get your momentum in the right direction, because your momentum has slowed down from being asleep and you've gone into that theta brainwave and things have shifted for you. And so I like the idea of, yes, sometimes you can wake up and you can meditate things away. But if it's running and the first thing that happens is you wake up and you're like, oh, there it is. There's my stress. There's my thing that I'm worried about. To be able to just go, where's my journal? And I want to write down, actually, what is it that I'm worried about? What is it that I need right now? And I'm just curious, have any of you guys ever done anything like that before? Where I get hung up in is, do I want to get too focused on the what isness of the problems? So there's like a balance, right? There's a heavy focus on what am I worried about right now, which could potentially create more of worry about whatever you're worrying about right now. Or, you can unwind it, get to the bottom of it, and then be able to release it that way. Like, I haven't figured out which is the most effective, efficient way to do it, because I can see both sides of it. Where you don't want to get wrapped up in the worry and create more of it. But I feel like sometimes the worry is coming up as an invitation for you to look deeper at something. Maybe it's something you don't need to be worried about. Maybe it's something that, you know, um, something that's been running that now is coming to the surface, because I always say, like, the universe, your guides, your whatever, don't give you anything that you are not totally prepared to handle. So if it's coming up, I feel like addressing it, because if you listen to Shaylee and I, and we talk about choosing the path of least resistance, and talking about Esther Hicks, which I'm sure we'll do one of her videos, maybe the next one. Um, and it's very much focused on stop focusing on the things you don't want, because you're creating more energy towards it. But I do feel like if there's a pattern of something that keeps popping up, it's asking to be looked at. So just in each of these things that are coming up for you, I want you guys to think about, is this a pattern of something that wants to be looked at? And can I look at it in a way where I know I'm just getting to the core of it, and I can notice a pattern, and I want to break this pattern up and not relive this, um, but not stay so stuck in the problem, right? So, like, maybe even set a timer. Here's my 10 minutes where I'm going to unwind this, and then from there, from that understanding at a deeper level, you can say, oh, remember we, to the little voice in your head or your guides or whatever it is, bringing this to your attention, your body. Oh, remember we looked at this earlier, and we don't need to be worried about that. If it's an old pattern that you recognize and you've done some work around it, it's having that conversation with your body sometimes can be really helpful. But I'm going to post all of these notes because it feels like then you guys can look through it and read over it, and then whatever comes up for you guys are more than welcome to share. Um, the process that he took people through that he was talking about was pause and in check. So waking up and being like, and this is like an invitation over the next 2 weeks for you guys to do this, like pay attention, get into a real conversation with your body. When I wake up and I feel like there's things I'm worried about, I usually will feel it in my solar plexus or my gut. Some people feel in their chest, their heart, sometimes get body aches. It's an open invitation over the next 2 weeks before the next one to have an ongoing conversation with your body. Waking up in the morning, do a check-in. Like, where am I holding? What's going on? How do you feel? Where's the goodness? Where's something that might be sticky? And do a non-objective, which means don't necessarily label it right off the bat. Um, because you want to just be curious and stay open. We have a lot of judgment and decisions made around what words are, emotions, particularly mad. You can be mad. Some people, it's okay to be mad. Some people, oh, I grew up and you should never be mad. So if you leave out the actual word and you just tap into what does this feel like right now? And what could that mean? That's a really good way to do it by stopping and acknowledging, oh, I have this like pit in my stomach right now. And then you can just ask, well, what's really going on right now? Are you worried? Are you excited? Are you anticipating something? Are you afraid of something? What is that? Like, what's this sensation happening in my body and what is it trying to share with me? Um, and 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 then from that place, once you've just sort of felt around, he says to name it. You can really dive into if you say, this is worried or this is afraid. If your body goes, ew, start there. Start there. Because there's some belief work to do around the word itself and your attachment to the meaning of it. And if you're rejecting it, you are essentially just rejecting a part of yourself. So when we do the shadow work in any of the programs, I'm really big on shadow work. It's like my favorite thing to do. And I feel like it's a lifestyle. It's not just like something you do once a year or twice a year. It's like every single day, every time I get triggered, every time I'm having an experience that I don't love, I go straight into the shadow piece. Like, and how can I love and accept this part, without judgment more. So if you do label it and you go, ew, I don't like that, ask yourself questions around that. I'm just teaching you guys how to coach yourselves, because it's very powerful to be able to do this and have this level of self-awareness and accountability. Um, Identify that specific emotion, right? So it's like, what is it? Fear, blah, blah, blah. Um, Naming it takes away some of its power and tends to help you focus. Sometimes. So this is the notes that I took directly from, and this is what he was saying. Sometimes. So I say just go to the first point where you're triggered. And if it is the label of the emotion, you can start there and ask questions about that. If you can say what it is and it's like, yeah, I'm sad, I'm worried, I'm angry. Great. Then move on to the next step, if that makes sense. Just start wherever you bump against that first bit of resistance, whether it's the label or it's the actual thing that's happening. That's just a little thing that I find really is it's powerful for people because sometimes you can skip that stuff. You're like, why does it still feel so sticky then when actually you need to go back a little further to the label of the emotion. Um, Reflect on whether the emotion is truly yours or if you're picking up on someone else's energy. Something we talked about yesterday is that tend to call in a lot of very empathetic people and a lot of people pleasers, a lot of people that are struggling to receive. Um, and that's just who is interested in what we do. So it's easy for me to speak to this because I know it'll resonate with a lot of people, right? So the highly empathetic people typically come from a background where there was a little bit of responsibility or a lot put on you to manage everyone's emotions or their experience around you. So if that is you, recognize that that really deeply empathetic thing you've got going on where you can tap into everyone's emotions can be a superpower. It could be a curse. Some people describe it as both. It's all about learning how to manage it and learning how to say, wait a minute, is this mine? And I ask that question all the time, especially when if I have the same pain in my body every time I get around a certain person, then I know this is probably not mine. Or if it just comes out of nowhere. Um, that's actually been happening to my left shoulder. And I was trying to identify the pattern because it just kept randomly coming up. And I think I figured it out. But so that kind of stuff, if you're super empathetic, physically tapping into sensations or just knowing that you're feeling the emotions around you, ultimately what you're saying is everybody around me has to feel good or I can't feel good. And that is so freaking draining because you quite literally do not have any control over how people around you feel. I feel you. I know that this is hard, especially there are certain people in your life where you're like, "Oh, but I love them so much. How can I help? How can I fix this?" It's just that's the growth and that's the learning. It's not your responsibility. And that can be very tricky, but also it can be a catalyst for people around you when you step back from being in that role of let me do all the things to make you feel better. You're actually taking away their power to make themselves feel better. A lot of times we can't really explore that stuff until we are deep in the shit. So just remember, right now I feel like I'm helping, but is it just actually at the core of it me wanting to feel regulated and better? And also, even if I perhaps make them feel better right now, it's just temporary relief and it's a band-aid, and you're actually taking away an experience for them that actually could help their growth progress. So it's just a different take on that. It will really help you be less affected if you're super sensitive. Um, so asking that question, wait, is this even mine? And if it isn't, you can get curious about that in that space. Well, why do I feel like I need to be responsible? Well, this happened to me when I was little, and I was told, "You are responsible for everyone's feelings." I was told that over and over and over again in many different forms. It can look like, little girls are supposed to be seen and not heard. It can look like you need to be good because your mother is really working hard for you, or, any type of like little tinge of something like that can be thrown out. And a little kid's mind will just take it and be like, oh, so in order for me to have love and connection and safety and my needs met, then I need to make sure that these people are happy. It's a thing. So just remembering, you can get curious there. So if you're past the label of the emotion, great. And then move into that. Well, if it isn't mine, why do I feel it? Why do I feel like it's my responsibility? And you can understand that and then accept it. It's not about saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be this way. That's more rejection, right? So you want to say, oh, this is why I am that way, and I understand it. I also understand I am not that version of myself anymore. And it's actually not my responsibility to make everyone happy. So you can start there with that. If it's not yours, consciously release it with a reminder it isn't mine to carry. Same. So you can do that. You can make a really short statement about that, right? This isn't mine. Um, But if you're finding that it's a pattern, because patterns are my jam, if it's a pattern, then it's something that wants to be looked at. So if it's the same person all the time, or if, whatever that is, then get curious there. Don't even move on. Start there, just right where you hit that first bump of resistance. Um, he suggests you shift perspective, reframe the situation by asking, what can I do about this right now? How can I move forward in a way that feels good and grounded? So it's at this current moment, what do I actually have control over? Say it's a situation where I can use a real life situation happening for my boyfriend. He is selling his property. He's prepping it to be on the market, but doesn't have a place to go. So there's a lot of uncertainty for the masculine. That's hard because they're very planny and they're very structured and very much like, here's what's going to happen. Da, da, da. He can't do that right now because the property hasn't sold. Nobody knows how much it's going to sell for. And so there's this level of uncertainty, right? So if you wake up and you have a situation where like, I'm worried about this thing, but I know there is absolutely nothing I can do about it at this current moment. Take a breath and go, if there was something that I could do, what would it be? Am I taking steps in the right direction to move forward in a way that feels good and aligned? So if you're making decisions from a place of panic, lack, scarcity, stress, any decision made from that place energetically is most likely going to be a detour for you to learn more about surrender and more about being in alignment and more about regulating yourself. So it's worth the time to stop, regulate yourself, check in and go, okay, actually, what would feel good for me right now? Which is the next step from a place where you're calm and grounded. Um, makes a huge difference. Huge difference. Oh yeah, that's the next step. Take aligned action, right? Decide on one small step to address what you're feeling, whether that's taking a deep breath, communicating with something, or simply shifting your focus. So it's really just about what's this tiny thing that can happen. I think what happens when we get overwhelmed is we think of everything as a very as a big giant thing that's in front of us. But when we realize if we just break it down, what can I actually do today? If there's nothing, then surrender. I talked a little bit about void division, where it was like making decisions from the void when everything sort of feels overwhelming and chaotic. And I always get this vision of like standing in the middle of like a tornado and like stuff is happening around you, but you're literally just standing like, what do I do first? Like, this feels crazy. You don't. You don't do anything when you're there. You meditate, you take a nap, you go do something that has nothing to do with whatever is creating this like chaos and void for you. That is a time to go quiet. It's a time to look within. It's a call to come back to yourself, and it's a call to come back to your own physical body. So that chaos is taking you external, and what you want to do is, wait a minute, it's an invitation because this feels yucky. It feels like I'm all over the place and I don't know what's right and I'm overwhelmed. And it's an invitation to call yourself back to your physical body. Okay, how can I breathe? What is the practice that you've chosen that feels good to you? It can be anything, it doesn't have to be meditation. It can be scooping poop. It can be taking a drive. I always think better when I drive. It can be, meditating. It can be taking a walk. It can be working out. It can be whatever it is, whatever brings you back into your body, into the current moment. And it's like this piece of remembering. It feels like when I have a lot of clients come to me with like, we'll say a problem, quote unquote, and they're like, here's this thing I'm dealing with. What do I do? And you're chipping away at this thing. I'm chipping away at this. This thing keeps happening. La, 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 la. I think sometimes we also lose sight of how far we've come. So it's a great practice to be able to, if you have a reoccurring thing or like a long thing that comes, or if it's short term, you can think back a month, think back 6 months, think back a year, and look at yourself where you stand now from that perspective. That perspective shift is really helpful if you do it very intentionally. There's something about it that just reminds you, oh yeah, I was here and I literally thought I was not going to make it. And it did not turn out at all like I thought it was going to. And so that can be true for this as well. There's progress that has been made that I lose sight of. And it's so interesting with like goals and like things that you think you want, you get them, and then you're like, okay, now what? It's like you work really hard to accomplish this thing, and oh, and when I get that, I'm going to feel this freedom. I'm going to feel so happy. I'm going to feel so satisfied. But there are studies done that show that if you get the thing that you think you want, and we only do things because we think that in the having those things, it's going to make us feel a certain way. We have them, we get them, and the effects are fairly temporary. That rush, the excitement, the satisfaction, the relief can be quite short for us humans. And then we're like, and now what? So it's good to be able to actually marinate a little bit longer in the having of the things that did happen good for you. Intentionally take yourself back to those places. Energetically, you're going to call in more of that sensation as long as you stay in it longer. We are doing manifesting magic in this month right now. And a lot about that is being energetically aligned with what you do want to call in. And a lot of that is about, how can I feel the having of the things that I want first? And some people are like, well, how would I do that? I don't even know. I've never had that thing. How would I know what it feels like? And so the energy that you can go to, that's like a big blanket vibration that's so yummy and good, is gratitude. And you can either go into those specific times where you felt like you accomplished a thing, or you did the thing that was hard and it worked out great. And you can go to that and go, oh my gosh, and go into the space of fully immersing yourself back in that moment. It's such a hardcore, amazing practice to do. I do it often. I have some go-tos that I remember when I'm feeling really stressed out, when I will intentionally stop and do a pattern interrupt when I'm going wild in my mind, and say, hold on, I just need to be in this moment, this moment where I had this like deep, intense connection, or I accomplished this thing. And what was it like? And what did I see? And where did I feel it in my body? And who was around? And what did they say? And you just fully immerse yourself back in those moments and just feel the energy of gratitude and just let it fill you up. If you're visual, you can give it a color. And in that color, you can imagine your memory and your relived experience can be up in this bubble above your head. And you can imagine the color and the energy of whatever emotion you were feeling that was so good. And then just imagine the sun melting through and letting that warm liquid light, that color just go through your entire body and just really like embody the feeling of what that moment was like. You can do that whenever you want. Um, and I think people will get hung up on, I'm going to go this plant medicine journey, or I need to do this hour-long meditation, or I need to do all these things, where I'm like, quite literally, like, if you practice that active imagination, which is a big part of the journeys I do, your body doesn't know the difference. Your mind can create experiences and your body can have that whole experience as if it went through. Your nervous system can have that experience again. You can get the rushes of dopamine, the cortisol, all the things that all the feel good things that you want. You can create all just by having a really strong active imagination process. And you can do it by associating a song with it, if that helps. You can do it by just having that memory. You can attach a word to it. There's a lot of different ways you can do it that are super potent. And maybe I'll talk more about that in the group. But yeah, so for this piece, just that real awareness of what am I bringing to my experience, and knowing that your horses are just, they're living their life and having their own experience. The things that they do will bring up your stories. A horse can pin his ears. One person can say that horse is aggressive and dangerous and I am afraid. One person can say that's just who that horse is. Ha ha ha, walk up and pet them and their ears come forward. One person, it's what I'm saying is like it's not the horse, it's not the lady in the grocery store, it's not the person you're in a relationship with, it's you. It's your perspective. So while that can feel a little bit like, oh, it's the point of entry for you to figure out where your resistance is, where you're not free. Those stories that you have that are old create your reality. And so if you want to hold so tightly onto them, then what you will end up having is the same lived experience through different people, through different scenarios, through different horses. And those things will continue to happen until you're ready to really like look at them and take accountability. So that is my rambling for the moment. I'm trying to keep these around like 20-30 minutes, but if you guys have anything that you want to share, then you're more than welcome to pop on and unmute yourselves if anything resonated with you, or if there's anything you guys want to try, anything that came from feeling into that video. You guys have a moment, you can raise your little hands or just unmute yourselves. But I would say for the next 2 weeks before the next one, really think about where I'm feeling the thing in my body, and can I actually like break it down, even if it's for committing like 10 minutes in the morning, if there's something that's coming up, and trying to have the shadow work as part of your daily life. Once you do it kind of deeply, you can do it on a surface level. You know what your triggers are, where your stuff gets, where your heart starts to beat really hard, or when you're getting mad, or when you're frustrated. And just remembering big picture, like you are wanting to hold on to the ability to regulate yourself for your health, like your whole body, your entire existence on the planet is really tied into your nervous system. And every time you have an old story pop up that kicks you into fight or flight, you're wearing down your system, especially if you're living chronically in it. So the incentive to do it is much bigger. And even though sometimes people won't pay attention to that stuff until their body is like, and we're stopping now, and we've quit. Here's this disease for you. Here's this injury. Here's whatever. You know, we don't want to wait. We don't want to wait till that happens. So, a huge basis of this stuff comes from that part is very important, super important. And just think big picture, I'm doing it for myself and my health. And the only thing you have through your entire body is or entire life is your physical body. So, so it should feel like reminding yourself as to why it's important. It's very important, very important. All right. So everyone good? There's Steph. Oh, hi, Stephanie. Hi,
Hey,
Stephanie.
hi. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. So can I just ask a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
And just with regard to supporting somebody who
Mhm.
maybe isn't ready to look at some accountability or has looked at some accountability, but at the moment is kind of like, I'm good with it? Or like, how do you help somebody like that? Or do you just say, oh, well, you'll get to it when you get to it?
You know what's so interesting is there was one video that I watched before I picked the one that I did, but it literally was a different video talking about, can I be in relationship with someone who's not doing the work? Um, Maybe I'll link, I'm sure I can find it because it's in my watch, but I'll link that one in the show notes of this one. Um, but basically it's very aligned with what I talk about, where when I started coaching, it was uncomfortable for me because I would see stuff and I wouldn't want to make the person feel bad or judged or in discomfort. So I would literally be like, how can I coach and then not want people to feel uncomfortable or, feel like I'm pointing something out to them that um, they're not ready to hear or whatever. And what what sort of happened was, in what he talked about was basically, yes, you can be in that relationship. It doesn't have to be a relationship, quote unquote. It can be a friendship. It can be of your family, whatever it is. And there's a line of growth in it for you. And you can think of it that way, where I can make a decision. And there's the line comes from, is this abusive? You know, um, it's not like a blanket thing where you're like, this person's really messed up, but I love them. The way to show them that I love them is to stay strong and let this. So you have to find where your line is, find where your window of tolerance for personal growth in the relationship is, versus now it's something that probably needs to just be not at all. And he basically said that you having a relationship with someone and being in communication with them and knowing that you see stuff going on and you're wanting to point it out because you want them to feel whatever. And it's very, as a coach, it's very obvious sometimes when I talk to somebody what's going on. And I'm like, oh gosh, there it is. But I know that in that current moment, I can bring it up, but sometimes it will be received and it won't. And it's all dependent on if the person is ready to hear it. And you can't make anyone ready to hear it. But what you can do is, how regulated can I stay? How grounded can I stay in my boundaries and my beliefs so that they're not wanting to participate in this piece doesn't mess me up, right? So if you're feeling like, oh, like I really want to, and now I'm thinking about it all the time, and I know this would be so easy if you would just do this thing. It's exploring, okay, I can use these situations. I'll go back to my relationship right now. I am 100% certain I want to be with this person. I am challenged on a regular basis. And and I know that in those moments I'm like, here is an invitation for me to stay more regulated than ever and hold space for this person who is at this current moment a 10-year-old little boy having a tantrum, and everyone has left. And now someone is like, you can have this hard time and I'm not going to leave. So if you understand it from your own perspective and what you're doing, it doesn't affect you. If you get sucked into it and start to make it mean, this is my fault, I haven't created a safe enough space, oh my gosh, like, and it starts to eat away at you, there's that line of, can I stay, how how much can I handle and stay regulated? And really, energetically, what happens is, if you stay solid and firm in your beliefs energetically and how you feel and what you're saying, you can share with them your thoughts and then detach from the outcome. You have to be willing to just surrender to let them have their own experience. You can have you can live in a way where they can see you as an example and go, wow, like, this was your experience now, and look who you are and who you've become and how much you've changed. And they can see that happening. If they ask you for advice, sure, but still remain completely detached from the outcome for them, because you dipping into a little bit of that responsibility. It's when I went back to when I was starting to coach, it was I can tell people things all the time, but I after the session is over, because the power comes from figuring it out and then doing the things, you can be accountable for the person if they are really wanting to shift some stuff and they feel like they keep falling short or they need someone to check in that's loving and non-judgmental. You can be that for them, but it really has to be them saying, I'm ready to hear you. um and also the other thing that I've learned, and I get a lot of learning in my relationship, is that it doesn't have to look like you think it has to look, right? So there are things where I'm like, no, like, this is what I teach. This is what I do. This is what I know to be true. All of my mentors say this thing in my head, and he will take it and process it completely different, but still come to the same outcome. And he's not in the area of personal development. He's not doing any, he's not watching any videos. You know what I mean? It's like people have their ability, their own innate intuition and ability and source of inspiration and ideas to help themselves way far beyond what any other person can do for them. They have their own guidance system, they have their own team, and maybe there are more lessons for them to learn in that space before they can move into that next space. And you wouldn't want to be the one that robbed them of that experience, even if it looks catastrophic. um, and and so it's basically there's those few, choices that you have to make. You understand I'm coming from a place of love and I'm here if you need me. Here are my suggestions, and then detach. And then just keep living the experiences that you're having, and several different things can come from that, them watching you and then or listening to what you said, or and you can even think of the things that you'll say will plant seeds, and even if it doesn't feel like it's landing in that current moment, it might be. So just don't make it about you and you're falling short if they're not listening or they're not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's not a feeling that I have, which is great. Like that, it
Oh, good.
never even really dawned on me, to be honest. But it's
Yeah.
more just a situation where if I point out, like, you kind of need to look inward,
Hmm.
I believe it will be received as blame. Like
Right.
it's your fault that you feel this way, right?
Hmm.
Which is not, which is not what I think.
Hmm.
That's not what I think, and that's not what I'm trying to communicate. But I just have a feeling that that is maybe how it will be received or perceived.
Right.
So that's where it gets tricky. So, as a result, I just kind of listen
Hmm.
and say, yeah, that's hard. And, and basically that's the end of the story, right? Like I'm not
Right.
saying anything more. So
Yeah.
even though I want
And you
to,
could,
so yeah,
and you could ask, are you open to feedback or do you want me to just listen?
yeah, yeah.
And see what that says. And then there's
Hmm.
kind of that calling in of they're in control of the suggestion. They've asked for it basically at that point. And that
Right.
might
Yeah. Okay.
allow them to be more open to suggestions, like,
Yeah.
and also another way to do it is, well, you can relate it to a situation that you've had, if there's something that's
Yeah,
similar.
that also gets tricky too, but for other reasons, because yeah, so but
Yeah.
anyway, I'm just trying to be really intentional and learn from my
Hmm.
previous interactions. Yeah, that I don't make it actually worse, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I also
yeah.
think the second part of that is energetically figuring out where you are in that moment, because what you say is less important than how you feel about what you're saying. So
Mm,
even if you were to speak, if they said, yes, I'm open to hear, and you were to say, look internally, if you have a belief that that's not going to be received, it will be received from them in that way. So if you're
yeah,
saying, like, let me get so aligned and I'm coming from such a place of love and a non-judgment, maybe you can get there, maybe you can't, but it's like the how you feel about what you're saying, maybe they're open. And then maybe in answering that question, when you say, do you want me to make a suggestion or do you want me to just listen? If they say yes, then your brain can go, oh, maybe they are open to hearing this. And then maybe it will be received different, where it's like, what I've done when I've been in this situation is this, and it was uncomfortable and I hated it and I looked inward and it pissed me off that that was me, but like, ultimately, this is what I figured out about myself. So maybe that would help
mm,
you or not.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And kind of leave it like,
Hmm.
and then
Yeah.
run off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'll try to I'll find that video and I'll post it in the show notes too because it was literally speaking to that exact thing and I was torn between the two, but it was a little longer. So I'll add that one in there. It's also a Peter Crone video. Um, so yeah, so then that will help you guys go a little further. Anybody else have anything that they want to add or share or ask before we wrap it up? Cool, cool. Well, thank you guys for being patient with my electronic fumbling in the beginning. I think that my my Zoom is now set up to go. So what I will do is I will post all these questions and all the things for you to reflect deeper on if any of this stuff resonated with you guys and you just want some, something to work on randomly, as if we don't have enough things to work on already. Then you'll have them at your little fingertips. And then feel free to come into the group and share anything that's happened around the video, how you guys felt, for you guys watching the recording. Open for all the discussions. And now I will go see why that horse is screaming its brains out for the last 10 minutes. So hope you guys have a lovely week coming up, and we will see you not next Monday, but the Monday after. All right. Thank you guys for having and coming and playing.